Doctors are leaving medicine. Should you quit too? New video by Santiago AQ. Let's see what he has to say.
I'm gonna be leaving medicine for good.
I left medicine.
Recently decided to quit my degree. It's all about why I quit a career in medicine.
I have quit my job as an anesthesiologist.
It was a good montage. Your boy didn't make the cut.
There seem to be a lot of doctors quitting their jobs. If you watch the videos, you kind of get the feeling that the advice is something along the lines of you have to figure out what you want out of life, what is your dream, and then you have to have the courage to pursue whatever that is. Should I quit my job? There's some things I like, there's some things I don't like about my job, but I'm seriously considering. First, I have to understand a key principle about human condition. And to do that, I want to show you this symbol right here, which, as you probably know, is the famous Eastern philosophy symbol of yin and yang. So, for those who don't know, this symbol basically represents the opposite but interconnected forces of life, right? You have order and chaos, day and night,
Jordan Peterson,
good and bad, pizza and vegetables, those kind of stuff.
I put vegetables on my pizza, all right?
Oh yeah? Quit eating greens.
That life is sort of a package deal, that you can't have one thing without the other, that you can have a positive without an associated negative.
Yeah, people oftentimes are like, oh, I just want to be happy. It's like, well, you can't actually have the good emotions unless you experience the bad emotions as a contrast, so.
On the left side, you have a guy who basically has no money, and he's suffering precisely because of that, because now he's thinking, okay, do my friends judge me for being cheap? Am I a moocher? But on the right side, you have a guy who is the complete opposite, who has tons of money, but is also suffering precisely because of that, because now he's thinking, okay, do my friends just like me because I'm rich? Are people using me?
More money, more problems. So I think it was Mark Manson in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F*** who discussed that as you upgrade your life, you're never escaping problems, you're just upgrading your problems.
Man, if I could just have a jet ski, all my problems would go away. Not realizing that having a jet ski presents all sorts of problems. You gotta find somewhere to store, you gotta pay maintenance for your jet ski. We only seem to see the benefits of our goals without seeing the problems or the sacrifices of our goals.
So this guy, when he's poor, he has a certain set of problems. When he's rich, he still has problems. He's escaped his previous problems, but now he's upgraded to a different set of problems. The other thing is that it's very much human nature to push against something, to resist, to have some problems. You can't just, I know a person who has what most would consider to be a near perfect upbringing. And even in that instance, you're not gonna just grow up and be like, oh yeah, I got no problems, life is great. It is human nature to find some issues. Even though those issues may be comparatively smaller to some other people's issues, you're gonna find issues, you're gonna find problems.
For instance, the person who is alone suffers because he's alone, while the person who's in a relationship, the complete opposite, suffers because of the emotional psychodrama that being in a relationship has.
Life is suffering. We find problems.
Life is suffering.
Yes!
The person who is fat suffers because of his body. The person who is very skinny also suffers because of his body, while the person who is in shape suffers because of the things they have to do to stay in shape.
Unless you're a masochist.
It turns out even the people who have no problems, who eliminate all the main problems of their life, they also suffer, because apparently living a life without problems makes you feel worthless, nihilistic, and depressed, and makes you start stressing over the—
You won't ever find a place in your life where you have no problems. You will always have problems. You won't even get to the point of feeling nihilistic and depressed and whatever and purposeless. You will find problems.
Contrary to what images like these would tell you, I think that negatives in our lives tend to represent more than 50% of our time and attention. I mean, think about it. Do you spend half of your time having breakthroughs, getting paychecks, receiving awards, and doing everything perfectly? Or do you spend most of your time solving problems and going through stuff?
But it's not that you spend most of your time solving problems, is that you spend most of your time working towards things, right? So the brief moment, the brief achievement, award, whatever, is very fleeting, but you can still take pleasure in the process, and it can still be a very positive experience of working towards that.
Negatives would still matter more to you in the end. On average, people feel a greater pain when losing $100 than they feel joy by finding that exact same amount. This is not a rational response, because in the end it's the same amount. But this is how it is because psychologically speaking, we are wired to pay more attention to negatives than to positives.
I think he's talking about two separate but similar things. One is loss aversion, whereby the negative emotional impact of losing $100 is a greater magnitude than the positive emotional impact of gaining $100, right? So losing something takes a larger toll on us. The second issue is negativity bias. Not the same thing. Let's see what he has to say.
Think that what's your dream and what do you want out of life are the wrong kind of questions. Because think about it, when you ask yourself these sort of questions, what comes to mind? If you're like most people, you think about a loving partner, a fulfilling job, a great salary, a big house, good health, being in shape. What do those things have in common? They're all positive. And that's precisely the problem, that these responses are only considering half of the picture, and they're considering the part of the picture that matters least. So because of this, I think that the questions we really should be answering are not what's my dream and what do I want out of life, but instead, what kind of pain do I prefer to endure? What kind of problems do I prefer to have in my day-to-day? First, it makes you consider and accept the negatives of the path you're about to embark. And this is vital because research has shown that when people make life-changing decisions, they tend to downplay the negatives. Sometimes they don't even think about them. And this is a problem because when you frame the question in a way that makes you think only about the positives, you unconsciously set up an expectation for your mind that everything should be positive, that your dream is for everything to be positive, that that's your dream. And that's a huge problem.
So I like what he's saying here. So a lot of people will focus on the positive when they're making these big decisions, but people should be focusing more on the negative. And you need to keep both in mind because I don't think focusing only on the negative is a good idea either. Because as Jordan Peterson said, everyone has to sacrifice something. You just need to choose what you're going to sacrifice. So that's kind of like choosing what your problems or what the downside is going to be.
There's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your damn suffering and bear it.
And Mark Manson has said similar things like, you know, pick your problems, which I think is good advice because we tend to focus too much on the positives. Yet, the thing that's coming up for me is that the positives oftentimes allow you to endure more of the negatives. So my first job was as a library aide at my local library back when I was in high school. Did not like the job at all. And there wasn't much positive, therefore the amount of negative I was willing to endure was not very much. I quit after a little over half a year. Maybe I worked there 7-ish months or something like that. Whereas when it came to earning my MD, I worked a lot harder for a lot longer and endured a lot more downside because there was also much more upside.
Imagine you were walking on the street and out of the blue, someone gifted you a brand new car. You'd be thrilled, right? Even if it has a few imperfections, even if you find some scratches in the back, you'd feel very happy because the expectation walking on the street is not to receive anything, let alone a car. So even a car with scratches and imperfections makes you happy. But if you spend a year saving up money looking for the perfect car, and then after buying the supposedly perfect car, you realize that there's a couple of scratches in the back and a couple of imperfections, you instantly feel sad because the expectation was for it to be perfect.
Yeah, expectation is huge. I'm reading this book or listening to this book called The Expectation Effect, which is actually very fascinating.
These terms makes you create a more realistic expectation, makes you consider and accept the negatives of the path you're about to embark. You can't really avoid problems, but to a certain extent, you can choose which type of problems you have. And this is basically what I thought when I decided to quit medicine. I thought, okay, I can't have a stress-free life, I understand that, but do I prefer to stress over medical board exams, certification courses, and clinic duties as a doctor, or over the process of crafting my own projects and my own courses as a creator? I thought, alright, sometimes I'll have shitty days, okay, but do I prefer to have them in my house, plotting out a complicated project, rewriting a script, or maybe reshooting this very same scene like 7 times, or do I prefer to have them in the hospital, sorting out a difficult patient, calling the lab, running around the hospital?
Yeah, so then if you have the same amount of positive, same amount of utility, same amount of gain from 2 career options, in that case you should choose the one that has less negative, right? But if one has more positive than the other, and that positive can be whatever you know, maybe it's the enjoyment you get from your work, maybe it's your work-life balance, like whatever your priorities are. If one job has more positive but also has more negative, then I think the calculus becomes a little bit more complicated.
So what I'm trying to say is that yes, my decision to leave medicine was partly done in the name of potential upsides of positives, but it was also made in the name of negatives, in the name of choosing which kind of downsides align more with the person I am. There's a paragraph by Mark Manson in the book The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F that summarizes perfectly my feelings on the matter. Imagine that somebody puts a gun to your head and tells you to have to run 26.2 miles in under 5 hours, or else he'll kill you and your entire family. That would suck. Now imagine that you bought nice shoes and running gear, trained religiously for months, and completed your first marathon with all of your closest family and friends cheering you on at the finish line. That could potentially be one of the proudest moments of your life. Exact same 26.2 miles, exact same person running them, exact same pain coursing through your exact same legs. But when you chose it freely and prepared for it, it was a glorious and important milestone in your life. When it was forced upon you against your will, it was one of the most terrifying and painful experiences of your life. Often, the only difference between a problem being painful or being powerful is a sense that we chose it and that we're responsible.
Yeah, the agency, the autonomy, choosing what your circumstances are and facing that adversity with a different perspective, the story you tell yourself versus it being forced upon you. Super key, super huge. Which also, by the way, is something that you can control the story you tell yourself. Even if something happens to you that you would not have chosen, you can still assign meaning to it and try to get that same value as if you were to choose it, even though it's forced upon you, if that makes sense. Yeah, obviously this is a super important topic. I think that choosing your career is one of the most important decisions in your life. Another big one being who you choose to be your life partner, or if you even decide to have a life partner. And there's no easy answer. I think you need to get different perspectives from a lot of different people. My buddy Kevin Foe from Kevin MD actually started a podcast, and he's speaking with other physicians, other medical professionals, smart people that are facing very similar issues. It's a podcast, and I mean, his whole platform is made by a doctor for doctors, right? And I think we need more of that in this day and age. We need to be having more of these thought-provoking and insightful conversations with other smart medical professionals. And each episode is about 20 minutes, plus or minus. You can check out his podcast, linked in the description. And I wanna say big thanks to Santiago AQ for creating this video. I mean, he always has very interesting things to say, insightful guy, smart dude. And let me know what you guys think. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you guys in that next one.